Welcome to the discussion. My guest today is Kevin Brooks, a principal digital strategist for DoD in the U.S. intelligence community at ServiceNow. Kevin, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Hey, thanks, Jesse, for having me. I appreciate it.
Let me set just a little bit of context for our discussion. Over the last 20 months, every agency, every business really, has experienced major changes to their workplace. I don't need to tell you just how different your office is today than it was pre-pandemic. The other thing agencies, and again, really all organizations, need to continually assess and address is the well-being of those employees. The annual Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, or FEVS, found a 3.9% increase in employee engagement scores over the last year. This is 2020. Employees collectively scored agencies 86.1 points with the support they received during the pandemic and their work unit's ability to deliver on mission. That's pretty good news for 2021. Now, as we move into fiscal 22, agencies must find ways to continue to improve their employee engagement scores as remote work, virtual meetings, and the like remain more of the norm as employees work in this hybrid environment. In fact, research from the Partnership for Public Service and Boston Consulting Group found successful agencies have a culture of integration that helps employees build their skills and professional networks. Researchers also say having a defined career path and a connection to mentors helps create successful relationships with the agency. Now, underlying all of this is data and technology, of course, to help agencies drive toward their overall goal of creating a healthy workplace. How agencies can continue to create that healthy workplace? Well, that's where Kevin Brooks, the principal digital strategist for DoD in the U.S. intelligence community at ServiceNow, is going to come in and tell us. So, Kevin, I don't need to tell you about the workforce changing and how different it is today, but there's also other pieces and parts that are also creating this change beyond the pandemic. What are you seeing? Why is the expectation changing from employees?
A lot of things. So obviously the pandemic was the largest one, but generational shifts. So as millennials and Gen Zs become more a part of the workforce, they have a different expectation of what their work experience should be. They're much more interested in experiential things than monetary things. So if they have a good working environment, they're more likely to come to a company or to stay with a company. And that's extremely important in the federal space because obviously federal agencies can't outspend the private sector when it comes to talent acquisition. They actually have to elevate their experiences so that you're not making a sacrifice of quality of work life and quality of financial security to work for the federal government. And at least if you do that, you have the opportunity to play on people's sense of duty and call to duty. That workplace experience really matters, and technology can really help because it can help bridge that employee and that manager relationship, which is very critical because we finally started talking about how people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. And so, we have this clash of cultures where boomers and Gen X leaders are struggling to adapt to the hybrid workforce. They're used to seeing you, being able to kind of reach out and touch you. As we called it in the Pentagon when I worked there, it's drive-by tasking. They're used to that. Employees aren't and don't want to have that. They want to have a much more predictable work life, and that's how digital transformation can help do that.
Now, as a member of the Gen X group here, and Kevin, you may be too, or you may be on the cusp of millennialness, I don't know. But I resent the fact you tell me I'm stuck in my old world. I thought that was my parents' world, that they wanted people there and had to see it. Now I'm there too. Help me understand something though, because I want to get into the technology and the data piece in a second. But what are you seeing when you talk to clients, government clients within the DoD sector, within the U.S. intelligence community? They've been on that cutting edge because there's always a new group of younger people coming in. Have they been seeing this trend over the years and adjusting, or they've been seeing it but maybe not adjusting? What are the trends you're seeing?
Yeah, so they've been seeing it and not adjusting. It's really they're applying old tools to new generations. And yes, I'm a Gen Xer myself, so it pains me to say those things about my fellow Gen X because I think we're special. But we have not really modernized our approach. It's really been, this is how the agency does it. This is our culture. This is how we do things. You need to adjust to how we're doing it. They're finally starting to realize that's not going to be tenable going forward. They have to start to adjust how they're doing a business in order to attract talent in the future and retain that talent. Today there is it's a workers environment. That's what I'm trying to get to. It is a workers environment. And the federal government and federal agencies are no different. They have to compete for that talent. And they've, just got to kind of get to the point of, we can't go back to the way we used to do business. This inflection point has to really grow into something more than just a 24-month flash in the pan that we had to do something because there was an exit circumstance. It has to become a different way of doing business.
What's interesting, I think, about this is attracting talent is one thing. I think the federal government, generally speaking, will always be able to attract. I think it's the retaining of talent that's key here, because I think once you get people in, you get them trained, that's a huge investment. And if they leave after 3 years or 5 years, or even after 10 years, that investment, you don't necessarily get a huge payback on that investment. What can be done to kind of address both the attraction, the recruitment side, but also the retainment side of really key people, whether it's cyber or contracting or wherever?
Yep. So that's when we come into the elevated, employee experience. How do you connect and build culture through a digital platform? When you have employees who are working through disparate locations, they may be at a separate site. They may be working from their kitchen table. They may be working from the beach in Florida. We don't know where they're working, but how do you connect with them to build culture? And that is a key thing. One way to do that is going to be senior leader engagement via technology, using Zoom for more than just meetings, or whatever digital platform you use for communication and video conferencing. Maybe host a happy hour. And this is kind of crazy stuff, but it's really re-recruiting. You have to re-recruit talent. So you have to make them feel a part of the mission, part of the organization by raising the cultural bar through technology. Sorry. And how do you do that? So we can get to that in a few minutes about some more tools for that, but you really have to push culture and connectiveness through digital means. And that's the way to re-recruit.
It's interesting when you talk about this re-recruitment side of it, because somebody who says, okay, I've worked there for 3 years, 5 years, I start to get a little antsy. How do you continue to evolve them? And you could lay out, it's easy to lay out a career path. Okay, here's, if you do this, you'll do this. But I think that's where also this technology platform has to come in to say,
Yep.
Now here, go get your training. Here, find a mentor and connect with the mentor. That's where the technology and the data can kind of underlie it all.
Absolutely. So we're working on new technology all the time. So the industry is doing that. One of the things we're doing at ServiceNow is we're leaning into something we call journey management. And with journey management, it gives the supervisor and the employee tools to help them navigate their career journey. And it starts with onboarding and having a smoother onboarding process to we call it Journey Accelerator. It's where the manager can create a customized role-based plan for each employee, which shows that personal touch. And they can use that to organize activities and tasks to personalize that employee's experience. Listening posts where we capture their feedback in a more consistent manner, rather than just having a annual employee survey. These little listening posts goes out every once in a while, whatever periodic cycle you want to use it on, and you're able to get the employee's feedback. We do the same thing for learning posts, where we can elevate that training environment for that individual employee, or an experience pack where HR can build a set of experiences for a particular work group if we know people are coming in. And that works really well with interns or fellows. And then life cycle events. So working through tough times as a unit is something we want to make sure we do as well. So those are some of the things we're talking about as far as keeping those employees on board.
And really what you're doing, what all of this is, whether it's that platform or just more generally the re-recruitment side, the happy hours, is all about employee care and support, ensuring that they feel like they're part of the team, not just, you're not just told you're part of the team, but you actually, there's a better feeling.
Yeah, there are about 4 areas that we think, that in discussion with customers, both in and out of the government, that really jump out when you start to aggregate employee care, employee well-being. One is that you just hit on right there, was employee care and support. How do you take care of employees and make sure they feel supported and cared for across the continuum of their employment? And how do you give them visibility to activities and internal and external resources? Climate and culture, which we touched on a little bit earlier as well. So you want to clearly communicate your organizational values, expectations, and then enable employees to participate in those things, those discussions, and those activities that help elevate the culture. And then when things do go sideways, either poor performance or something happens interpersonal between employees, how do you reduce those things? And then finally, accountability. How do you address them if they actually do happen? So those are the kind of 4 touchstones we've been finding as we talk, review literature, and listen to our customers.
Let's maybe take a half a step back and dig into them a little bit, because I think
Okay.
one of the important things here is you're seeing this in the private and the public sector. So
Yep.
usually you hear about employees and how the care and support side is really driven by the private sector. You're starting to see this in the government side too. If there's any anecdotes or examples, even state and local, where are you seeing this happening?
So I think state and local is doing a little bit better job than the federal for now. But we have a few clients out there who are starting to use our listening posts, and we're working with them to the surveys are the best part. So, like listening posts and those employee surveys are where we're finding the most traction today, because they're the easiest to implement. And they replace an archaic system of, every year you get a 70 questionnaire and you fill it out or you don't, and the return rate's low. A 4-question snapshot you have to take when you first log on their computer in the morning, that's easy to fill out. It's more current and it gives you much more actionable data in real time. So that's one of the first things I think the federal government is starting to do and starting to embrace. They're also looking at employee care a little bit more. The federal government has a great EAP, an employee wellness plan, if you will, but it's disparately used. It's not well understood. And most of the time you can't access it from your work system. It's something you have to access by phone, through a separate website. And that's one of the things I think employees want, is to be able to access employer-provided benefits on an employer-provided platform. And that's where we're having a lot of conversations with Charos about, hey, how can you elevate your employee experience with the stuff you already do? Not new stuff. Let's just bring it all together in a portal to make it easier for them to access while they're at work, whether that work is at their kitchen table or in your office in downtown DC.
The surveys are interesting because when you do these quick polls, okay, how do you feel about this? What do you see about this? What concerns you about vaccines coming back to work? You pick the topic. The next step is, okay, what are you going to do with that information? Are agencies understanding what to do with that information once they get it? Because a lot of times you get, analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, I think so. It depends on the question and the agency, but I think for the most part, yeah, they're starting to understand what to do with it. Some of them take that information and just ask better questions of what they're doing in their process. They challenge that process they're doing. Others, where we've seen a lot of, change that comes out of surveys, is the return to work plan. They have altered the return to work plans based on what the employees have told them. Some agencies have extended work from home. Some have modified the requirements for coming back into the office. So that's where we're seeing the most impact in the short term is, hey, let's modify these plans. Folks aren't comfortable. Let's figure this out. Other places where it is elevating those, I wouldn't say benefit, the non-tangible benefits. So, allowing those folks who do have to come back still some flexibility in their work schedule. So, hey, you got to come back to the office. We'll let you pick the days, and you can pick anything from these core hours and figure out where you're going. So addressing immediate employee needs has been something they have actually listened to, and they've taken that data that they can't action right away, and they're looking at their long-term plans for that.
I think that's key to really make the adjustments, make sure the employees see that you're listening to them and hearing them and making the adjustments. Kevin, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we can continue our conversation. You're listening to the discussion Innovation in Government, sponsored by Carahsoft on Federal News Network.